is not a Rolex Datejust. It doesn't boast the heritage of Rolex, there's no cask certification on its dial, and it probably won't be passed on as a family heirloom. Yet it does everything a Datejust does at a fraction of the price. In fact, this watch only costs about as much as servicing the Swiss-made watch does. So no, this is not a Rolex Datejust. This is a Traska Commuter. John Mack had a very busy 2023. In addition to launching a watch I'll feature soon in my top 10 microbrand watches of the year, on their 5th anniversary, Traska released the 3rd generation of the Commuter, and they did it with a bang, as this is the first time they strayed from the 36mm standard. But more on that later. This is what collectors call a GADA watch. An acronym for Go Anywhere, Do Anything. The GADA should be elegant enough to wear in a formal setting, yet rugged enough to handle the challenges posed by daily wear. As a consequence, the case of this watch seamlessly combines sporty and dressy attributes in a compact, easy-to-wear package. We're talking about a 36.5mm diameter and a 44mm length, but as previously mentioned, this time Traska offer both upsizing to 38.5mm and downsizing to 34.5mm. This review premieres just 2 days before the launching of those variants, so I will explore them towards the end of the video. Coming back to the watch at hand, its luxuriously polished sides contrast with a finely brushed case top without clashing and start a theme replicated throughout the oyster bracelet. The radially brushed bezel is delimited by a light-catching polished ring. It would be a shame if such exquisite finishing would be blemished by scratches, but Traska's hardening treatment takes its steel imperviousness to 1200 Vickers, thus ensuring you'll be able to enjoy the Commuter in its fresh-out-of-the-box form for a long time. Traska's beautiful crest is embossed on a white background on the adequately proportioned, perfectly placed screw-down crown. The tactile sensations offered by using it are great, aided by good, crisp feedback. The caliber powering the Commuter is a reliable Miyota 9039. I usually don't post accuracy figures because of the movement's acceptable deviation rates, but considering this watch gained a total of 15 seconds in a week, I must say Traska are doing a great job regulating them. I love it when microbrands know precisely what they want to achieve and use design as means to achieving that goal rather than creating a dysfunctional hot mess. Such an example is Traska going for a plain, solid caseback that ensures water resistance down to 10 bar while contributing to a class-leading 10.5mm thickness, of which the sapphire crystal claims almost 2mm. The double dome structure and the anti-reflective coating applied on its underside ensure perfect legibility, and the boxed shape brings a certain warmth and vintage charm to an otherwise reserved timepiece. The Commuter's dial is both elegant and practical. It obviously, as hundreds of watches, pays respect to a certain configuration, but especially in the date version, there are enough original choices to call this a true homage in the worst case. The multifaceted markers do a great job at pinging back the light, the date's placement and integration is perfect, and the minimum amount of printing keeps the dial uncluttered, but for me, the stars of the show are the diamond cut hands. Besides their perfect length and the beveling that gives them depth, the brushing on the center line matching the one on the dial and creating a skeleton structure illusion is unfortunately a feat impossible to replicate on the other sizes of the commuter because the brushed sunburst pattern of the silver dial is specific to the 36 model. Of course, the Superluminova BGW9 compound application is beyond reproach, so the luminosity of the hands and markers meets the lofty standards set by the rest of the watch. As previously mentioned, the finishing of the commuter's oyster bracelet mirrors the alternation found on the watch head. Therefore, we have polished sides delimiting the satin-brushed fully articulated links. Of course, the same hardening treatment is applied throughout, making sure the bracelet too will be impervious to scratches. Contributing to the aesthetics and the comfort of the watch, the bracelet tapers off rather dramatically from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the double deployment clasp. The beautiful perlage completes a sleek design with a couple of chamfers transitioning from the laser-etched topside to the flanks that are punctuated by the micro-adjustment openings. In fact, considering the couple of half links the bracelet comes equipped with and the 5 micro-adjustment positions, getting a good fit is hardly a challenge. My 19cm wrist is above average, and for a long time I believed I had no business wearing any watch smaller than 40mm, so sporting a 36.5mm timepiece was not something I would have even considered a few months ago. However, I just love the way the commuter sits on my wrist, and the main reason is the lug width. Most of the 36mm watches have a rather classic configuration where the straps or bracelets used are 18mm wide or even narrower. By opting for a 20mm bracelet, Traska have managed to create a pseudo-unibody construction, offering more presence on the wrist, further aiding this illusion by slimming down the watch and flattening it. The result is an ensemble that adds a couple of millimeters to the real dimensions of the watch. Of course, that wouldn't have been possible without the seamless integration of the end links and the beautiful taper of the bracelet. Another factor that helps this particular variant is the lack of contrast between the dial and the rest of the watch, so I cannot vouch for the other dials. Before introducing the 2 new variants, a quick word on the packaging. Looking at the cardboard box, one would be forgiven for thinking there's a designer perfume inside, but the star of the show is the leather pouch that has a very luxurious looks and feel. So, let's now analyze the 2 brand new variants that will be launched in a couple of days' time on December 3rd. To make the information easier to digest, I made up this little table detailing the things that differ from variant to variant. Traska certainly haven't made the task of choosing based on color easy, as the only common nuance is the mint green. The 34 and the 36 also share the Aegean blue, but the classic white and black dials are reserved only for the 38. Of course, each diameter influences the other key measurements, but for me, the main aspect is the lug width. Compromises had to be made, and while apparently the 19mm lug opening of the 34 is the more radical one, I would rather point out to the way keeping the bracelet 20mm wide will lead to the 38.5mm variant appear slightly bloated. The renders on Traska's website are somewhat misleading as they don't showcase the difference in size. I have watched a couple of previews on YouTube, and I must say there's a noticeable difference between the streamlined 36 and the bulkier 38, particularly at the tip of the lugs, leading to the bracelet losing the faux integration characteristic. The 38mm variant strikes back with a killer feature though. The on-the-fly ratcheting micro-adjustment system integrated in the clasp that alone justifies the $40 markup on the 36mm watch. So, this review's verdict is not concerning whether one should buy the third generation of the Commuter, but rather which of the variants is more adequate for one's wrist. All things considered, especially if your wrist is between 5.5 and 7 inch in diameter, I believe you should opt for the 36. This is the OG, the Commuter in its well-planned perfection. Think of it as an iconic car that has just received a couple of step siblings in the form of a stretch limo treatment and a convertible two-seater variant. On the other hand, if your wrist is averse to any watch whose diameter doesn't start with 4, you should opt for the 38, of course. You'll then have access to a couple of perks us, mere mortals, can only dream of. Luxurious enamel-like white or piano black dials, and the type of clasp there's no coming back from. And that's the reason why I'm quite mad at this watch. It's almost perfect, but the more time you spend trying to settle for one variant, the more you regret not being able to enjoy perks that are unavailable to you. I have a feeling though that in a few months' time all dial variants will be available to all sizes and standalone modern clasps will be available for retrofit. The question is, can you wait for a few months?